Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. The budget work session for City Council will now come to order. Madam Clerk, if you would provide the chamber emergency evacuation announcement.
Upon activation of the emergency alarm signal, all persons should immediately exit the building. Please use the exits to the left, right, or front of the council chamber or the east or west stairwell outside the rear doors of the chamber. Do not use elevators or escalators. After exiting the building, proceed down 9th Street and enter the assembly area located in the former Public Safety Building parking lot. Able persons should assist visually in hearing impaired visitors with exiting the building.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Members, at this time, we are going to invite our acting Council Chief of Staff forward so we can begin our council amendment considerations and the presentation.
Good morning, everyone. Matthew Slatz, Interim Chief of Staff. We're excited to be here, continuing to review and pull information together. And I just want to note that I'm joined by our Chief of Staff here, the Interim Chief of Staff, Mr. Wagner, our budget team, Ms. Davenport, Ms. Lunsford, Ms. Shaw, and then our policy team with Mr. Perkins here to help support conversations. Want to note too that we're trying to get information to you as quickly as possible. There's a lot of information flowing and changes happening, and recognizing that we're trying to set high standard for making sure that council has the information they need, and we're going to continue to work towards getting information to you as soon as possible. Just in terms of today, our primary focus for this session is centering on the operating amendments that you've all submitted, both enhancements and reductions. And then next Monday, our major focus will be on discussing the CIP side of this conversation. You've been given a series of handouts that has both the information from today's operating amendments and the CIP stuff for next Monday. So we wanted to get that in paper to you today so that you can review that. But just noting our timeline, again, today is our focusing on operating amendments. And then on Monday, focusing on the CIP and really getting down to centering on our balancing our amendments, making sure we're in line. There is a conversation, I wanted to flag this for you all, about adding a time and a public comment session on Monday, which will be up for conversation as we go through today, based on desire from Monday's meeting. Again, we're trying to get the amendments into the city's attorney's office by end of day on the 21st, which then the amendments can be introduced on the 28th, with the 12th being the establishment of the Richmond governmental budget. In terms of today too, I think what we're really looking to do and to support you all in doing is really finding alignment with these amendments. There already is some alignment. Questions on where are we investing, which is a constant conversation in this work. Where isn't there agreement too? I think we need to be honest about that. Really thinking about the scope of council's review, like what do you have the power to do? I think is an important thing to recognize. Where are things that we might be focusing on for the future too? We might not be able to get everything in the budget today or this time through, but how are we working towards that? And then finally, just really balancing the budget and keep reminding that we have to walk away with a balanced budget. I want to also recognize the level of collaboration that has been going on. We are all recognizing the difficulties and limits of this process. It's been a sprint, and we want to deeply think about the next year and how we can be supportive in doing that. Recognize that we did submit priorities to administration in December. We received those several meetings. We received some of that information earlier this week. We're receiving more information today. We're trying to do our best to be as collaborative as possible and supportive of one another. So again, a huge thanks to you all for getting the amendments in that we did last week. Chief of Staff's office for all the work doing and reviewing, the liaisons for facilitating that information, the budget office for being super responsive, the mayor similarly being responsive, and the CAO for their time and effort. I mean, what is a difficult time. So as of yesterday, or as of this morning, I should say, council members have received, on the operating side, we have received a total of 48 enhancements, totaling almost $21 million. And council members and some staff have identified 77 possible reductions, totaling just over $8 million. So that's as of this morning. I think we're getting more information from the CAO and the budget staff, and we're happy to have them step up and help us talk through that a little bit more. That was as of this morning. That will change as we move forward. So just recognizing that is a moment as of this morning. In terms of the process for today, so we're gonna go through these specific requests as best as possible. We're gonna ask for council feedback. We're gonna do verification with the administration. We're ask them to come forward and respond to questions and give their feedback. Ultimately, we're trying to find consensus around where we're gonna make some investments. And again, the question is like, where is our alignment? What would you like to advocate for? What is a critical investment? What might be something for the future again? And where else might we find support in the budget? Are kind of questions that we want to be thinking about with you. In terms of what we're going to kind of dive into in reductions, you'll see in the papers that you have in front of you, there's reductions broken down by personnel, operating, and there's still questions about some non-departmental. I know, although a lot of work has been done around non-departmental, we're still trying to review some of that personnel opportunities for reductions. That will be in a conversation today, and you received some more information again just a few minutes ago. Again, the operating reductions are basically coming from council and staff. Things we were hearing from you. And then we were trying to dig deeper into the budget, seeing where we could find opportunities for reductions. In terms of the enhancements, you have several more spreadsheets, and we're going to present these. We're going to present these by thinking about the outside agencies, again, non-departmental, RPS, Richmond Ambulance Authority, and others, and then dive into the DCO clusters, again, thinking about personnel and operating, and then wrap up with the council offices. And then finally, if there's time, we also want to have our policy team come forward and just discuss the ordinance changes, the text amendments that have been put forward for today. We'll see how we do in time moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wagner to help us start moving forward in this process. And again, also inviting Interim CAO Joy Hogg to come forward and speak on these pieces as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Daniel Wagner, Interim Deputy Chief of Staff for City Council. First off, I want to thank everyone in this room today because what you're about to do is look at about 7 different spreadsheets that we've compiled along with the administration, and that's going to be a bit of a task. So housekeeping first, I would say today we're going to focus on operating. We're going to reserve time on Monday, the 21st, to really dive into our capital proposals. So I apologize, we accidentally overprinted. So you have a few capital spreadsheets in front of you. I would say when you're looking at the spreadsheets that you want to work with today, you will see the spreadsheet that begins with, it's a blue spreadsheet that says personnel specialized audit staff. That's going to be our operating enhancements. And then that will end in total operating enhancements totaling $20,940,000. That will be a big conversation for our proposed enhancements. You'll also look at a grayscale sheet that is draft personnel reductions. So Matthew is going to pull each of these up on the screen, but you'll also have these in front of you. So these were compiled by council members as well as the Chief of Staff's office using third quarter vacancy data. Admittedly, this is out of date data, but it is the most up to date we had at the time. And I want to thank again the CAO as well as Megan Brown and her team who helped us get some better up to date information in 2 business days. So really thankful for you all's work. It's a lot to go through all of these. So when we're going through each of these today, you'll actually be looking at 2 spreadsheets at a time usually. One is the draft proposals that were put together, again, combination of you all's work as well as our staff. And then the administration's response where, especially in terms of personnel, it's important that we recognize if a position is what we thought at the time vacant, but has actually been filled, we don't intend to cut that position. If we've already hired someone, we want them to keep their job, obviously. And the other piece is in recruitment. This is, you'll find a number of the positions that we've flagged that have either been vacant for a long period of time, maybe 3+ years, or were flagged as vacant, never filled. These positions may be in recruitment now, and we can come to an agreement as a body, but our recommendation would be not to disrupt that recruitment process. So we will have updated numbers later today, but we wanted to give us a global sense of what we were kind of working with, because as Matthew noted, we have a large aspirational goal of enhancing the mayor's proposed budget, operating budget by almost $21 million. All of these are incredibly important priorities to your districts, to the city writ large. However, in a difficult budget year, we're working with a lot. It's a lot tighter to find those commensurate reductions. So we'll have to do some prioritization together. Any questions before we start to dive into each of these?
Thank you so much. Just
Yeah.
quickly, I think there's some confusion, people, myself included, looking at the
Yes.
screen versus the document.
Mhm.
So are we walking through this together on paper or on the screen?
So I would say let's focus on the paper, but Matthew will follow along on the screen as well. And to the extent that it's feasible, also update some of those numbers. But before we dive in, are there any other further questions? I'm also going to give interim CAO Joy Hogg a moment to talk through the impacts that they've outlined for those operating reductions that we proposed. All good otherwise? Ms. Joy Hogg? Sorry. So I think, let's talk
Okay.
through these personnel reductions.
Okay, the spreadsheet that's on screen is not one that we received, so I'm not entirely sure what's on that. If they're using third quarter projections, that is not the number that is included in
Ms.
the
Joy,
proposed
could
budget.
you hold 1 second?
Sure.
I have a question. Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to highlight something that I think is important for members of the public who are either here in person or watching. Is this meeting being streamed as well? Yes, great. So in our last meeting, I just highlighted the importance of publishing all of the amendments, and I appreciate that we now have access to them. In preparation for the meetings, I go to the city Legistar where all of the documentation for our meetings are organized for public access and, access for council members as well. And right now, for this meeting we're in right now, if you go to that meeting and you look at the agenda, the only agenda item, the only document that the public can see is the presentation, basically several pages. I guess it's an 11-page PowerPoint presentation that's basically just an outline of this discussion. So on that page, which, I mean, the Legistar is our official method for disseminating meeting-related materials to the public. And the amendment document that we're reviewing right now, as far as I can tell, is not there. And so I believe the only way that the public would be able to find the amendments that we're discussing is if they knew to go to the city website and then find the city council page on the city website. And then once they get to the city council page on the website, scroll, 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 scroll. There's a bunch of scrolling to get to the middle of the page. And in the middle of the page, there's a link to view the draft council 2025 proposed budget amendments. Takes a lot of scrolling to get there.
Madam President,
And
if I could interject at this moment.
no, I'm speaking. Thank you. It provides a link to one of the spreadsheets that we have on the dais here with us right now. But it doesn't link to the document that shows who has submitted the various amendments. And I personally think that there is public interest in understanding who submitted the various amendments that we'll be discussing. So is it possible to have the clerk upload in this moment in time the amendment spreadsheet with the name of the council person who's made the amendments, and actually really any piece of paper that I have right now in front of me, I think there is public interest in having that availability of that document so that they can follow along in a as we hope they should be.
Did you have Councilmember Durkin?
Yeah, thank you so much, Madam President. Wholeheartedly agree. We've been asking for the names to be included in these documents. We all want this up further. I think we've had, consensus around a desire for this process to be improved. But we also, express desires to have working meetings where we're getting into it right in the moment. And I just want to defend our staff who've been working up to the very moment of getting these documents to us in a way that is as easy to decipher as possible, which is incredibly difficult given the size of that booklet and when we ourselves have been submitting our amendments. So I think there's just a push and a pull between if you want to have that public working meeting, it's going to be really difficult to have all those documents in advance as far as possible as we would all desire. So I don't know how you balance that out, but I think, 100% committed to any and all feedback on this process and making it as transparent and engaging for the public as possible. And I will note on the last page of the slide deck, we've included the public comment for 6 o'clock so that we'd had discussion about do we just include it at the end of the next work session, but then we don't know when we're going to finish. So let's give people a clear time after work. Hopefully that's more easy for them to digest, but just noted, and we're trying to get these things out and up as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I just want to respond to this. What we will do, and I'll work with staff to as quickly as possible get these things uploaded to our Legistar site so that citizens are not scrolling down. And I, to Ms. Jordan's point, staff have been working diligently. Some of these things have changed from day to day as we get new information. So trying to make sure what we do get out is as accurate and current as possible, but I'll definitely get with staff to that point. So
Thank you.
thank you. Ms. She's still here. Ms. Sabrina Joy Hogg, I couldn't see you back there.
Okay, Sabrina Joy Hogg, interim CAO. As I mentioned before, what's displayed on screen is not something I have seen, so I cannot speak to it. Also, if it's third quarter projections, those are not the same numbers that are included in the proposed budget. It shifts. So if you're making any reductions or enhancements, it has to be done against the numbers included in the proposed budget. All right, so I think the budget office has already sent you around 9:30 our responses to some of the personnel reductions, the operating. We did not get time to finish up the enhancements, so we do not have comments on the enhancements, but if there are particular questions that you have for me, I'll try to answer them. But those will be forthcoming as well. So let's go through the personnel reductions, and that sheet that you should be using should look like this. And it says personnel on top. Okay, so I won't go through every single position that's listed here. I will tell you the first one, transformation manager, that is a priority of the mayor's office. That was part of his one of his 7 priorities that he came in with. And that position was a result of a position that budget gave up. And it was not that they needed to give, they need that position, but they were willing to give it up to meet the mayor's priority. So I would say if the transformation manager is not something that you want to approve, then please give the budget office that position back to them. Because again, we were trying to find money and in the most economical way, produce a budget. Let me also say that the proposed budget was introduced with almost $14 million in direct reductions to departments. So we have already considered a lot of reductions within the departments. Again, almost 14 million was introduced. So it's not that we didn't reduce the departments, we already did. So the second one, the CAO's office, we actually gave up a filled senior management analyst position. We also gave up the rest of the DCAO money for operations. That was over almost $600,000 that the CAO's office gave up. Again, we will have a new CAO. I don't know what the needs are going to be there. So I would urge you not to cut that position. Next, the citywide 3.25, capping it at $150,000. We've provided you a lengthy explanation. That creates inequity within the system. That also is a very demotivator for staff. It tells staff that they're not valued. It also creates compression issues that we will then have to correct throughout the year. That will also cost the city money. And some of those positions are on step plans, so we're going to have to cap them. Emergency communications, we do not recommend cutting any positions in emergency communications. I believe when I talked to the director recently, he only had 1 vacancy left because he just started an academy class. And we already introduced the budget with $900,000 in a reduction for DEC. Finance, moving on to finance, all of those positions there, we spent the last, 3 years since I've been here, beefing up finance because we know finance was severely underfunded. Our finance department is not just a finance department. It is the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer's functions. In most other localities, those are 3 separate departments because the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer are elected. And each of those departments have their own staffing of 30 or 40 people. When I got here, finance was just finance and funded just as finance. We were not recognizing the staffing needed for the Commissioner of Revenue or the Treasurer. So we spent the last really 2.5 years beefing up finance, and to take positions away now would revert it back to like prior to 2021 fiscal times. Finance is in the middle of automation. There will come a time where we can reduce these functions, but we're not there yet. We need at least another 2 years, 2 to 3 years to automate fully. Then we can look at restructuring the organization. But taking away positions right now from finance while the director is managing workload, reorganizing, and trying to make things work with the appropriate staffing is not the time to take away finance positions. Additionally, there was some operating cuts that were suggested for finance. If the operating cut goes through, we will have to close Southside and EDI because that is the function that is out of there that you are cutting. And if that's what you want to do, that's perfectly your will.
Ms. Joy Hahn?
Yes, ma'am.
1 second, I have a question. Councilmember Trammell.
I said there are some reductions that are proposed for finance between personnel and operating, that those are the functions that also support the EDI location and Southside Plaza. Southside Plaza, we will have to pull finance staff out of there and the functions out of there. We'd have to, if they were personnel, we'd have to fire them. We would have to fire them.
So, can we turn, we can't hear. Can you turn? Okay.
It's red.
Yes, it's up.
I'm sorry, this is very important,
Mhm.
very important. Because you just said that you would fire the people over there at Southside Plaza Social Service Building, which is in my district, in which a hell of a lot of people go over
Mhm.
there from our people
Mhm.
go over there. And but you're saying if we cut this, you will have to fire them and close the building.
The director will have to make staffing decisions because she will not have these positions available to her. And the operating reductions that have been suggested affect Southside and EDI. So if we're not providing the service there, I'm not sure we can have the staff on board.
Thank you. Councilmember Robertson? Were you lit up? Oh,
Madam Chair, I've probably got about 10 documents in front of me and what is being addressed and what is on the screen and the flow of this. First of all, let me just say that
Could you please speak more into
positions
your
are
mic?
positions and they are difficult to, the form that, the chart that we're looking at here, what I want to be sure when I'm listening to your conversation is many of these reductions classify them as new or vacant. And so my understanding of what vacant means that there is no person yet in those positions. But what I want to be clear about is whether or not your response is related to positions that are not filled at the present time, but needs to be filled, right? Or if they are occupied, there is a staff person that's there. And so that we can distinguish between the difference. If we can be clear on that. And then the other thing, it's this spreadsheet that we are following. We can maybe just, if the screen is in line with the presentation that.
It is.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so some of these positions are out for recruitment in this whole spreadsheet. Some have offers made against them, and some are getting ready to be posted. Just because they are vacant now doesn't mean that the department doesn't need that position. They're in the timeline to get filled in a lot of cases. Other times, they're vacant, but the department is using temporary services because they have not been able to fill in time. So that money is actually being used by a temp agency for services that are being rendered. Other times, that money is also being used for overtime, especially in finance. During tax season, there's a lot of overtime because they're processing thousands and thousands of bills. All those positions may not be filled at the time because that is their busiest time of the year. So they will be using that money for overtime or temporary positions. And then when the schedule lightens up, they will post those positions and fill them. And because finance has been working towards reorganization and managing workload, it is a fluid situation in finance. I can't tell you a position today as a whatever it is, management analyst, won't be converted to a revenue manager. It may, because again, they're going through the workload needs as they become more automated. So that's why I didn't go through every single finance position. But I will tell you, in comparing other localities, like just for Chesterfield, our finance department last year, before we added 50 positions, was 98 positions shy. We actually need to add more positions to finance, but we have not done so because she does have these vacancies, and we said fill those first, then let's see where we end up and see where the workload is, because at the same time, they are improving their processes and going to automation. And I promise you, in a few more years, once they're fully automated, we will look at staffing. But again, right now, finance is just beginning to make changes. And I would hate to upset finance right now. I don't mean as an emotion, I mean take away her ability to manage the workload as she sees fit. So let's move on to fire, I think is the next one. Yes, fire. Fire, we already introduced the budget with almost $800,000 in cuts. We actually eliminated filled positions in fire. I cannot speak to the battalion chief and the operator. I'll let Chief Siegel speak to that because they do have minimum staffing standards. It's okay. I'll call you up. Chief. We'll come back to him. Human resources. We introduced the budget with 700,000 in cuts to them. Human resources is another department that we have been working on to manage workload and make better. If you remember a couple of years, we took HR down to the studs. We reorged that department completely. It was a massive effort to do that. And we reorganized it by creating brand new positions and job descriptions and credentialing requirements. We now have a training and development department. HR also is the hub of collective bargaining. They're also doing recruitment and retention and compensation and benefits. The whole move to VRS was an immense undertaking for them. Again, HR, we've already cut $700,000 out of their budget, and they are trying to manage the workload now. That's another department that we're very sensitive about because they are starting to figure out where they're going to land. They're not there yet. So the next one is IT. There's a business systems analyst that is currently in recruitment. That is a revenue producing position. IT is an internal service fund, so even if you cut that position, the effect is on the IT. And plus, the revenue goes away because that's the position that collects the revenue for telecom. Internal government affairs, I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but we do have a person in that position. We will not reduce her salary. Neighborhood and community services. When we created neighborhood and community services, we created one director and 4 neighborhood specialists, which I think they've renamed now. But all other positions in neighborhood services came from other departments or other areas of the human services portfolio. They are not new positions. They came from homeless services, which was in DSS, Office of Immigration, Child and Family Services. There were almost 11 direct reports to that DCAO. That was too big of a span of controlled and uncoordinated service delivery. So we created neighborhood services to combine all of that for more effective service delivery. There are 2 positions of those then called neighborhood service specialists that offers have been made. There are 2 that are vacant. If you want, we can pause on those as well. But I would say if we've made offers, that is a commitment from the city, we should honor them. Office of Community Wealth Building. I know the mayor has been in deep discussions to talk about the mission and the goals of Office of Community Wealth Building, and he plans on sort of reorganizing, refocusing them. There's probably two positions that are vacant there that if you want to reduce, you may do so. Office of Strategic Comms. Again, we have a new director there. We centralized communications a couple of years ago. We pulled in all of the comms people from the departments where they were sitting, and we put them underneath the umbrella of one director. However, those positions are deployed into the departments. So Mercante, who's in the police department, is shown under the communications budget, but he sits with police. All of those comms people sit in the departments, helping the departments, but they are under one director under the strategic comms umbrella, so we can have a unified voice when we talk to the public. Years ago, when they were all decentralized, it was like schizophrenia. We were all talking from both sides of our mouth. We're trying to get our communication to the public unified.
Ms. Joy Hogg?
Yes, ma'am.
Second, I have a question. Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt it once again. I just was hoping we could talk about how we best use this chunk of time. We started at 10, it's now 10:40. And I really think that understanding that the cuts that council has made and submitted are not by and large supported by the administration. I think we expected that. Certainly, your team spent a considerable amount of time developing the budget, and if you agreed with the cuts we're suggesting, you would have made them. I understand that. And so we only have now an hour and 20 minutes. I would really love to hear from my colleagues about the recommended additions and the cuts that they've made. I think, in each of these work sessions, so much of the time has been carved for administration to make presentations. It simply does not allow council time to do the work, which is to dig into these discussions. And respectfully, I understand that this body may end up making changes that you may not agree with. We have all spent times in our communities hearing from folks, and in our communities, I can tell you in mine, the city residents are eager for some substantial change. And in order for us to meet those needs, that we might need to make some drastic changes in this document. I also wanted to highlight, going back to my concern about the documentation, and I recognize this, I'm going to sound persnickety, but when it comes to building trust amongst residents, I'm not going to let it go. So I do not see any reason. We had to submit all of our amendments via a form. And so when you submit it in a form, it automatically populates into an Excel spreadsheet. I do not see a reason that document, as is, could not have been uploaded and shared the day after we had to submit it.
So, Ms. Gibson.
Wait, please let me.
Gibson, let me just say, number one, I do want these cuts that Ms. Joy Hogg they didn't have them until after we submitted this on the 9th. Not everybody used that form that you're recommending, that you're suggesting. Not everyone submitted on that form. People submitted their recommendations for amendments or cuts, not necessarily on that form. I would like to have the opportunity to hear the administration's feedback on the cuts that we propose. We have another sheet, and then go, as you're asking, to the amendments. So we'll go there next.
One other point, though, I'd like to make is this documentation, since I haven't even had time to confirm that everything I've submitted is there, and I can tell you that I have made one cut. I recommended cutting about $2 million from the communications department, a department that's grown probably by about $2 million over just 2 years. 2 years. I mean, we have as many people working, almost as many people working in our communications team as we do for animal control. I would like to see that cut. However, I've looked through all the documents. I didn't even have enough time to look through these documents because they were emailed to us at 9:46 this morning. So what I'm saying is I'm not even sure we're looking at, I have no idea that this document that we have even includes all of the recommended changes from my colleagues. I have no way of knowing that. And I don't care if it was a form or if it was scratched on a piece of rock, like it could have been
I got
shared.
you. So Ms. Gibson, the staff have compiled our recommendations, whether they came on the form, on slips of paper, whatever. So we're going to cover those. If you don't see yours there, we'll make sure that that is added. I do want to let Ms. Joy Hogg get through her comments, and I do want to get then to the amendments. Ms. Abubakar, you have a question for Ms. Joy Hogg? Okay.
One, I do want to say I agree with my colleague in that there is a lot of time spent on this presentation and we don't get to do the work. And I think that is something we need to consider how we shift when we're moving forward. Two, I understand that anytime there are cuts, that people are what make this organization. That being said, I have always led with positions, not people. And what we need to be looking at is who these positions, like what these positions are doing, and are they providing direct services to the people of Richmond? So with that, I ask you, because it drives me nuts, what is a management analyst? Yeah, what is there's a lot of management analysts. So
So management analysts are used in different capacities depending on the department. And they look at policy, they look at analysis, they could be collecting revenue. They could be doing a lot of things in every department. You have management analysts in council agencies too.
Yeah.
We have management analysts. We have senior policy advisors as well. And I've heard you discuss those. Let me tell you, a senior policy advisor was the one who developed the GAP real estate income-based relief program. It was a policy advisor who was at the water treatment plant trying to get it back online. It was a policy advisor who helped us transition to VRS. These are higher level positions that help analytically, but also get into the weeds of analysis. We have management analysts that work in 311, I believe, in public works. All of them, they analyze data for better service delivery. So the management analyst is really a catch-all. I wish there was a different term for it, but they are widespread throughout this organization doing a variety of functions that fall within the job description. So these are not just folks who sit around and write policy. These are folks who are in the trenches doing work.
So some of them, what I understand, it can vary from sort of clerical, administrative duties to, as what you're talking about, in the field doing the work. In the future, I think that there needs to be a conversation around specifying these roles. I don't know why you need a senior policy advisor in the Office of Communications. The communications, I'm a communications person. We communicate out the policy. We don't need to create the policy. That is not our role. Our role is to advise on how that policy may be perceived in the public eye, but we're not creating policy. So some of these things, I just want to note that the sort of, there is this sense of like threatening what will happen if these things are done. And I think that's counterproductive to this conversation because frankly, you continue to talk about how things were in 2018 or 2016. People are longing for those days. Go walk the streets. They're longing for those days. Whatever was happening and whoever was in those positions and however dysfunctional it was behind the curtain, people were feeling like they were getting better services than they are today. And I just want to say this because this is important.
Yeah.
I'm all for us going through growing pains and becoming a top tier city, and that does require investment in people. We have made significant investments in people over the last 4 years. What I take into question is not these, management analysts or these people that are doing the work day to day, I take into question how we've hijacked collective bargaining to give people substantial raises that were already at $200,000 and above. And if you want me to call them out, I can, but like the data shows there are people that are making that are in current roles that are making $68,000 more this year than they were last year. $30,000 more, $47,000 more, $30,000 more, $18,000 more. That's where I'm asking for conversation.
So, Ms. Alberbacher, if you would provide that list so that do you have that list?
No, some of those raises were related to the 5% shift for retirement. So it wasn't raises, it was the 5% contribution that we did last January.
Okay.
And so let me get back on.
Well, but I want to make sure whatever the additional questions you have relative to the management analyst clarification, the various categories, if we can get that, but also then in terms of these particular items where you have noted the increase, we can get that so we can get those responses back.
But even if these are more than 5%, right? Like there are roles where they are getting more than a 5% increase.
So I can't stand here and speak to
Yeah,
every
I'm
single
saying
one,
let's get
but
that information to Ms. Joy Hogg and staff so we can get clarification
So
on
just
that.
real quick, the information that was provided by administration on salary comparisons, those salaries that are in those spreadsheet, do they include all of the benefits entitled to that role, or are they just straight salaries?
I think it's only salaries. I think
So that wouldn't actually, that 5% that you're talking about for retirement would not be included in
the
that.
5% is part of the base salary now.
It's part of the base
Yeah,
salary.
right. So what we did was, because employees were not contributing equally to Richmond Retirement System when we did the VRS transition, we took money that we would have contributed to RRS, put it into people's salaries so they can pay it directly.
But we also provide a match for them.
Yes. Well, we grossed up their salary for tax impact. But so that 5% went into their salaries. And yes, then July 1, there was a 4% increase.
Okay, so then there's going to be another, okay.
Ms.
I want
Alberbacher,
clarification.
would you get that spreadsheet actually to staff, to all of us, but especially the administration, so we can get those responses?
Okay. So back to the spreadsheet. Parks and Rec.
Ms. Joy, do you have something in particular relative to this?
Only have but an hour left. If
We're
we have to,
we're wrapping
can we
up on
stay
this.
longer, because I mean, we're here now. And I mean,
I'm fine with
everybody's
that, Mr.
asking
Allen.
for questions and Sabrina is giving us great answers back.
I'm fine with that if members are amenable to doing that. Yeah.
What
Ms.
we-
Joy Hogg, if you could get through this so we can, and there will need to be follow-up with you, just as you've heard from Ms. Alberbacher and other questions that we'll still need to get clarification on.
Yeah, we're still trying to answer Monday's questions as well.
Okay.
So what am I doing? Am I finishing?
Yes.
Okay.
There's one last.
Okay. And by the way, I'm happy to not do presentations. I've done this because I was asked to do it. So if I don't have to ever do a presentation, I'm good. Parks and Rec. We introduced the budget with $300,000 in reductions. They are also opening new community centers that they're using existing staffing to redeploy. So keep that in mind if you're going to reduce them further. Police. We introduced the budget with 4.5 million reduction to police. Some of that was right sizing, but I will tell you, Chief Edwards is changing his workload. He's moving civilians to sworn and sworn to civilians. So I don't want to upset him, not him personally, but his ability to manage his department where he sees the need to do so. Remember, we also have speed cameras and red light cameras now that he's got a staff. Utilities. Utilities is an enterprise fund. Again, we have a new director there. He is reshaping that organization, and those funds cannot be used to support general fund means. And back to communications. Communications was a new department back in, I think, 2023. it, it did increase because we centralized it. We brought all of those positions from the departments into one department under one umbrella. Am I good?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. And more to come in terms of clarification on the items that were mentioned or the need for. Yes. Yeah, Ms. Let's proceed in terms of amendments. Is that?
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Joyhog. A reminder, so a lot of these reductions that were proposed were, again, we're using incomplete data. So we really appreciate the administration for turning around all of that information quickly. And again, very much appreciative of each of y'all's attention to the notion that there is going to be impact whenever we make a decision like this throughout this process. So definitely appreciate each of you all's attention to that in making your recommendations, as well as understanding the gravity of what we look when we look at commensurate reduction. So thank you. I think what would be great is if we want to switch over to our proposed enhancements, talk about where we have alignment there. Is that okay with you, Dr. Newbill? Yep. Yeah, and everyone else as well agree? All right. Thank you, Dr. Slatts. Should you make that large? Yes. Wonderful. Could you scroll to the top, please? Or apologies, Dr. Slatts, could you move to the previous spreadsheet, because that is reflective of the handout that folks have in front of them. You'll see at the top of your handout, yes, that's correct. Yep. So, and scroll over, please. These are large spreadsheets for a large screen. How we have organized these enhancements is based on existing alignment. So each of you all take your districts into account when you make these proposals, as well as citywide priorities. And we're excited to see that right off the bat, we
that slight technology glitch here.
Yes.
Okay, let's roll, sir.
I think we're live again. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. Okay, so moving on down the list, we do have also some good alignment around finding a way to increase the wages for some of our contract workers. There's slightly different proposals on the table, but I believe an estimate that we've received is that it could cost about 1.7 million. We have not yet received verification from the administration. However, I know that they're working on that, and that's definitely something that they'll want to weigh in on as well. But we already have 4 members, I believe, who are in support of this. And again, as Dr. Newbill laid out, if you are seeing something on this list you'd like to also express your support for, let us know, and staff will make sure that you're added to this list.
Okay.
Continuing on down the line, we have adding to the Family Crisis Fund. The mayor's proposal included $520,000 for the Family Crisis Fund as a charitable contribution to humankind. So members have expressed support for increasing this to restore it to, I believe, closer to FY24 levels. So that $1 million increase has been reflected in this sheet as well. Seeing already some really good alignment from council members in this submission. And yeah, if nothing further, I'll keep moving down.
Just a quick-
Caritas is.
I'm so
Oh,
sorry.
yes.
Yeah, President, well, just a quick clarifying question.
Yeah.
So the amount increase is the new total up to 1 million.
So no, the column F is F on the screen, but the amount increase is the proposed enhancement to the mayor's proposed budget.
So to bring it to 1.5
Correct.
is what people are saying.
Yes.
Thank you.
Continuing on, we have Caritas, so supporting a year-round all-day shelter. A handful of members have expressed support for this or submitted an amendment. And the same can be said for the Trauma Healing Response Network. So again, the mayor has included some level of funding for those 2 programs. However, the council members are proposing an increase to that allocation. Moving on down the list is the Office of the Council Chief of Staff. So in the mayor's proposed budget, there was a proposal to remove 1.5 FTEs. So a number of council members expressed support of restoring those reduced positions, as well as making a part-time media specialist a full-time employee. So that increase is reflected there. There's also another proposal. It's down the list, but I believe Councilmember Gibson also had a larger request to add PB staff to that OCCOS line item for personnel. So that cost estimate comes out to closer to a $500,000 increase rather than just the 206 included in line 9 for, or I'm sorry, yeah, it is line 9 for personnel for the Chief of Staff's office. The next few are enhancements to the assessors, both operating and personnel budgets. So software licenses, as well as contracted services that he believes he's going to need, especially in light of our realignment of the assessment cycles. He's really looking for the appropriate support from both the operating and personnel standpoint. So we have a customer service representative as a personnel line item increase, as well as some of that operating technology increases included in those proposals. That can also be said for the auditor. He's asked for some increased enhancements to his operating budget in addition to the personnel that we've provided. Yes, Ms. Trammell.
I wanted my name to them, but they're not on here, I see. There's my name
Awesome.
added to them.
We'll absolutely add your name to those.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And then what was the other one with our Let me see, it's, personnel restore.
To the Chief of Staff's office, restoring positions that were reduced.
Well, I am still looking for the resumes for each of our employees on that third floor, on where we work.
Very good.
I do not have that yet, and I've been asking for that for at least 6 weeks or whatever, maybe longer than that. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Continuing forward, so we also have a proposal from council members to provide salary adjustments for the deputy clerks over at the circuit court. So that's to the tune of about $237,000. Council members Abu Bakr and Lynch have expressed support for that. And Ms. Trammell as well. We'll make sure that that is added. Thank you very much. And next is a new proposal, adding staff capacity to each city council member's office. So this could add a policy analyst for each council member. This estimate comes out to about $1 million across the 9 council districts. So this would add that staff capacity in addition to the existing liaison positions. And then next we have Home, which provides, this is a non-departmental ask. This is 2 staff positions that have been previously funded for folks who may be facing housing discrimination. Home also provides fair housing investigation and testing. So this would be to restore some funding to the tune of $250,000 to that organization to support residents across the city. For OAR, it's a reentry service program. So the mayor did include $50,000 in his proposal. I believe in past years, it's been funded at $100,000. So council members have expressed support in restoring that funding to get it up to the full complement of $100,000. And next is a similar kind of situation for Next Up RVA for the positive youth development. So the mayor did propose $500,000 in funding allocation. However, that represents a reduction from years past. So this restores some, but not all of its funding, about 90% of its funding for that program. The next one is actually representative of some really interesting conversations we've been having in our Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Committee around a city rental inspection program. So this estimate is definitely unvetted, I would say, as far as the cost. However, it does represent council's commitment to providing some sort of staff capacity for this program. The administration has signaled that it may be that they could conduct this program without additional staff, but it is dependent upon the size of the rental inspection districts that are created by council. Council members submitted an amendment in order to ensure that staff capacity was available. However, this could change depending on discussions that happen further at the Land Use, Housing, and Transportation Committee, and then obviously before the full body. But this is these members' commitment to this program represented in that amendment. Next, we have 2 council members who want to ensure that enhancements are made to the mayor's allocated funding for the Richmond Ambulance Authority. So these cover heart rate monitors, some personnel increases, as well as ambulance leases for their fleet. So this is definitely something that council members talk about supporting every year, and the mayor has proposed again $7.1 million for that for the Richmond Ambulance Authority, but they're looking for a little bit more of an enhancement to cover the demand for service. Next one's a fun one, Richmond Public Schools. So the mayor has proposed to enhance their budget by approximately $9.6 million. There are multiple proposals on the table from council members to increase that allocation. Now, this is another space where I do want to offer a little bit of caution. What we have the ability to do is propose a change to the allocation. We cannot, however, compel them to use money for a specific purpose. Now, we can state what our goal is as a body for those enhancements. However, Once the money leaves the city, it's the prerogative of RPS and the school board to decide how that money is spent. So this is an option that's absolutely on the table. We have a proposal to increase the allocation by 6.9 million, as well as a proposal to increase it by 4 million. That will be something that we can consider as a body. But again, just cautioning, this is not something where we can say, okay, you have to use 1 million for this, 3 million for this, et cetera. That's not in the scope of our powers. Further down the list, the Richmond retirement system, providing a 1% COLA for retirees. So this is one of those where now that we've transitioned to VRS, council members expressed support for ensuring that those cost of living adjustments are still accounted for our existing RRS folks. And typically, this is only done on an ad hoc basis. We do not have sort of an automatic increase to their cost of living. So this is something that we can decide as a body to provide in each year, but it's not something that is like an annual thing that automatically happens.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
before you go forward, going back to RPS,
Of course.
you built in 4 million. I know my colleague requested that. 6.9 is not reflected in the computation anywhere, the variance. That would be between the 9.6 and so how'd you land on the lesser amount?
I'm sorry.
How did you land on the lesser amount?
The 6.9 million?
The 4 million is what?
Oh, I'm sorry. The 4 million is a different council member's proposal.
Oh, I
That's-
understand that.
Yeah.
That's
that-
my question.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that
Yes,
was not, that was arbitrary.
I
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. So I'll get back with you on that.
Yes.
And I'm not, I mean, I knew that that was one
Mhm.
amount submitted, but also 6.9
Mhm.
was submitted. So the arbitrariness of, I'll follow up with you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can absolutely break those out as two separate proposals as opposed to having them inclusive of each other. The goal there was to show that there was alignment, but I understand. Yep. All right. The next is we're getting into places where we might not have alignment, but these are areas where council members have explicit support for. So adding some personnel to animal care and control, an adoption coordinator and a kennel assistant for the new adoption center. Ms. Trammell, you'd like to be added as well? Absolutely. And then next is reorganization of the council chief of staff office. And that's something that will take, I think, a longer amount of time to consider, but it is, something that we could approach as we bring on a new chief of staff. I'll defer to council on that, obviously, on how those discussions can be approached. And I mentioned earlier, Councilmember Gibson, this is a chief of staff office enhancement in addition to the restoration of those reduced positions. This is reflective of adding the further people's budget staff to the office. So Ms. Gibson submitted an amendment for $500,000 in total, covering that restoration and also adding additional positions. The next is Councilmember Lynch, who's been talking about this a lot in her EHS committee meeting, increasing our capacity for our overflow inclement weather shelter. So this would be a $700,000 commitment to increase the capacity allocated to the Department of Neighborhood Services. So this has been, I think, a lengthy discussion in EHS for a while, and this hopes to capture some of that. Ms. Abubakar has submitted an increase in personnel for the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Engagement for bilingual translators. So that would be an addition of $150,000. And then we dive into a lot of our non-departmental enhancements. So some of these do have at least partial funding. So definitely want to recognize that this is a place where the mayor has tried to make some effort to include funding for these. However, perhaps they either received slightly reduced funding or in some cases, no funding at all in this fiscal year. Yeah. Yeah. President Newble, I think Ms. Abubakar would like.
I'm sorry, I was looking down at sheet.
It's okay. Oh, it's
Councilmember
okay.
Abubakar.
I want to make a clarification. That was actually Councilmember Jones who proposed it, but I was just supporting it.
Oh, okay. Very good. Yep, we can. So can we put Ms. Jones there? Thank you.
For which item?
For OERA, is that correct? Yes. So the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Engagement, adding Ms. Jones as the lead patron there with Abubakar supporting. Thank you for the clarification. So running through these, yes, we'll do very quickly. Black History Museum. So that's a $100,000 restoration. Help Me Help You did receive $50,000. This is an enhancement of a further $50,000. Homeward, a $50,000 enhancement, and then a $25,000 enhancement to MBL Youth Entrepreneurship Programs, a $50,000 increase to Richmond Sports Backers, a $17,500 increase to the Peter Paul Development Center, $500,000 increase to Thrive Birth to 5, and then a restoration of funding for UBU 100, supporting, I believe, after-school programming at MLK Middle School. Am I correct on that, Ms. Robertson? So yeah, the UBU 100, is that after-school programming at MLK Middle School? Yes. Okay, excellent. And then 186,000 for underground kitchen. And then back to existing programs, we have the mayor has proposed to continue funding our Right to Counsel grant fund, which provides legal services to folks facing eviction of $500,000, and Ms. Gibson is proposing to increase that by $500,000, getting it to a total of $1 million. And Mr. Breton would like to be added as a co-patron. Thank you. As well as Ms. Robertson and Ms. Jones.
I'm sorry, which one was that?
I'm sorry?
Can you repeat which item that was?
Yes, that is the Right to Counsel for evictions. Yes. So yeah, so Gibson proposal with, adding Breton, Robertson, and Jones. So the Sister Cities Commission, one of our council boards and commissions, the proposed budget does not include operating support to the tune of $30,000, which was the case in FY25. Councilmember Jones is asked to restore that. And then the eviction diversion program, slightly different than Right to Counsel, obviously, but serving a similar purpose. This proposal from Councilmember Breton would increase the mayor's proposal by $200,000. Yeah. Okay. Up to 1 million. Apologies for that. That's a clerical error then. Thank you.
Gone next time. Weren't hearing you well, so.
Great. So I was clear. I believe the mayor's proposal for eviction diversion was 800, and so my proposal of 200 would bring it up to a total of $1 million. And on the previous version, they had written 500,000.
Got it. Thank you very much for the clarification. And then New Life Deliverance Tabernacle is at-risk youth programming that Councilmember Lynch would like to see funded at $500,000. I'm sorry, $50,000. I'm giving them a bit of a bump there. And then, so this next one, I think, is going to be one that is of huge value, but potentially may take a little bit more consideration over the course of the next year, which would, what Councilmember Jones has identified is there is a gap in connectivity to the new Southside Community Center on Old Warwick Road. So we have 2 bus lines that get close to connecting, but they do not quite connect, and they do not provide direct bus service to that community center. We're not in the business of changing GRTC's routes. However, we can, as a member of their board or representatives on their board, we can absolutely work with them to try to improve that connectivity. As not a transit planner for GRTC, the closest and easiest approach would be to tweak the Route 1B. However, what our recommendation is that we take the time to work with them to propose a future tweak for their service for the upcoming year. And again, that cost estimate would have to be tweaked accordingly. I suspect that it'll be more than $100,000. And then the other piece would be to confirm that we have the sidewalk connectivity, because we want to make sure that once you do get the stop there, do we have an appropriate landing pad and ADA accessibility included in that, which that could range probably about $100,000 just for the landing pad and an appropriate bus shelter itself. So more to come on that essentially, but a really important flag for this body. Further, looking at programming for Southside Community Center, ensuring that appropriate staffing and programmatic expenses are provided at the community center through the Parks and Rec. And the same could be said for Broad Rock Sports Complex, as well as an annual block party, which would be essentially a similar, but I think a reduced version of the People's Music Festival that was hosted last year. And then next we have a restoration of funding of $100,000 for the Public Arts Commission, as well as including funding for the Virginia Conservation Assistance Program. And then we have a couple of personnel restorations in the Department of Public Works and Social Services. So these are positions that it was proposed that they would be removed, and these are proposed to be restored by Councilmember Aberbacher. And then lastly, we have the Office of Sustainability. So there's part-time or a temporary position that would be made a full-time position, as well as the Circular Economy Program, providing some operations funding to help the Office of Sustainability run that program effectively. But that is the sort of the whole gamut of what we've proposed. It's a lot of really valuable priorities, and the question that we will have to wrestle with will be, how do we appropriately get to a place of prioritization?
Daniel, what I want to say is this is not the sum total of what was proposed, because in fact, we have proposals from December, many members across many of these items.
Correct.
And so then based on a lot of those, some of them were included in the mayor's budget. So this is the second component here.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so members got that on Monday, that list. And you'll see the full list, or the community would see the full list of proposals from members.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, that's a great framing for this conversation. Is the budget that was proposed by the mayor and the administration did in fact attempt to include some of the priorities that were submitted earlier in the year.
Okay. And then the last thing, I would make the adjustment for the additional $2+ million to the $20+ million for the 6.9.
Yes.
Until we get to a place, hopefully we'll get something back from schools based on the questions that went over that help us get some more clarification. Councilmember Aberbacher.
Yeah, I just wanted to, in terms of the eviction diversion program and then the other program that was listed for helping with legal services around evictions, can we talk about what both of those programs do, where there's overlap, if there's an ability for us to figure out how we kind of combine resources so that we're more impactful? Yeah.
Yep.
You're not, Mr. Can you no, I'm trying to get you so we can hear you. Okay.
Yeah, so as a patron of two of these, I can speak to the distinction here. So eviction diversion is a fund that is direct cash assistance to actually pay the rent of people who are in eviction court, subject to the analysis of them being a proper candidate, which means it's just like a one-time problem. They have strong evidence that this is not going to be recurring. This is not delaying the inevitable. That this is like, so it's cash. Like, oh, they owe about $1,000 of rent, and if we can just give them $1,000, they won't start this cycle of eviction that would really ruin their life. So that's the eviction diversion fund is directly related to that. Like, it's just cash assistance for that fund purpose only. The right to counsel is where we fund a set of lawyers who also work in the courts to help give them advice and information about how to manage the process. It's currently funded at $500,000, and that funds maybe like about 2 lawyers or so, maybe a little more to help with that. And so that would create, if we double that from 500 to $1 million, that would create more staff, more lawyers who can provide counsel, provide guidance, because the majority of people come in don't have the assistance of a lawyer, and it can really make a difference. So that's the difference between those two. Like, one is for staffing and one is cash assistance. And of course, there's perhaps an overlap with the Family Crisis Fund, which is a totally separate project, but some people might in their minds think of it as a similar type of fund where, it can impact somebody in a crisis that can really change the trajectory of their lives potentially, but it's a totally separate, fund, totally separate process. That would be the Family Crisis Fund. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Robertson?
It's not, oh, thank you. Just one clarification. I'd like to make the line item, my name only on city council, no specific program, reorganization of the office, not dismantling, please. And secondly, it's not to request, the dollar amount was more specifically to appropriate some funding for the assessment of what potential reorganizations that would be more in line. Some single amendments also address like adding another staff person, and so that's somewhat what I have in mind, but it's not this entire budget amount. So
okay.
I want to make sure we make that correction. And what would be helpful also when we look at family services and eviction. So I see eviction and all things related to housing. If we can find a way to kind of group those things together that are related to housing, and then if we can find a way to group those things that are directly related to family services, so that we can at least put them in a box together and figure out whether or not they are interconnected and whether or not we, looking at that total voice subject matter. If the staff could help us do something like that, that would be helpful. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that clarification, Councilwoman. I believe we have in the council budget funds for a consultant services that to the tune of about 100,000 that would lend itself to this kind of review with the council in terms of possible reorg, which a lot of members have asked about.
Well, Madam Chair, we have not, I've heard different things that are in the process, but also some staffing that have been, we're considering hiring before we bring on the council chief of staff. So I think that's a discussion that we need to have about what's currently there as well.
Councilmember Abubakar.
Wonderful.
I just wanted to note that I would like to be added to both of the eviction diversion and the right to counsel. And I think my colleague, Ms. Trammell, would like to be added to, what is it? The public utilities and the social services fraud investigator of mine and public works.
Yes. So for clarity, Matthew, we're going to add Ms. Trammell to the public works personnel enhancements, restoring some of those cut positions. That's closer to the bottom. So you'll see there. Yep. As well as, am I correct, the VCAP program or no? Oh, social services. Very good. Yep. So restoring those positions. And then Ms. Abubakar will be added as a patron for right to counsel for evictions, as well as the eviction diversion program.
Mr. Wagner, I have some
Yes.
I'd like to be added to, but I'll just
Mhm.
give them to you so
Yep.
that we don't take time.
Yeah,
Okay.
and members,
Great.
yeah, if you have things that you flag later that you'd like to add your support to, you're more than welcome to let us know, and we'll absolutely make that reflected. All right, so at this time, we do, I think, need to talk through a little bit further the reductions, if that is the will of the body, obviously. Or I guess, Dr. Newbill, if you'd like to.
Councilmember Gibson.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess I would like to hear from our leadership how we can, I'm new and I'm curious, how you facilitate, how did the body facilitate these discussions in the past? Because, I can stay later today, if that is the will of the body. But I'm trying to understand, given that we are looking at these materials for the first time, I'm still confirming the accuracy based on what we've submitted for cuts. We haven't discussed consensus on those things that we want to add, that we want to prioritize. There's not a lot of time right now for council members to even be able to. I'm just looking for thoughts in terms of how to best structure the time that we have to be as productive as possible.
Thank you. And we've been going back and forth with this because we have both the cuts to try to get consensus, and before we could get to that, we wanted to make sure of the reality of those. And so that was why staff administration was really working diligently to, these are not real, or these are filled, or that kind of thing. So both that as well as the proposed, what I'll call them enhancements for the moment. Ideally, to go through and see where there would be some consensus, at least preliminarily. Even we still need to get more information from administration, and so we've requested that. We still have some questions. So I'll take RPS for example. We've requested information from schools that would determine probably the amount that would be recommended, but we still need to get some sense from this body if any amount people would be interested in other than the two of us, or any of these categories. So ideally to go through and see if there is general consensus on the items would be an opportunity here while we're all together. But it's not, no, it is not final, because we still will need information back from the administration in terms of the additional questions, the items that we've recommended for cuts. So no, but we can try to get consensus on these items amongst ourselves here today. And so that would be, well, I know it's challenging. The timing it is not great timing. Yeah.
Thank you. Generally speaking, I think when it comes to the budget, my preference would be for, as we're making these decisions, to have a vote rather than consensus, just because I think there should be some record of how we stand on these matters. And I think that the body has done that in the past.
We do vote eventually, but this is just to get general consensus. We still have more information that we'll need to make final decision where a vote will, really be non-negotiable.
My colleague is chatting.
Councilmember Jones.
So I would suggest that, I think that there is, it would be helpful to, one, have an opportunity to confirm the documentation that's here against the things that we've submitted. And then I think it would be, I would welcome the opportunity to hear from, perhaps at our next meeting, to hear from my colleagues to make a case for the things that they've submitted, to get a sense of what their thinking was in making those additions or those adds. Um, and then ultimately, defer to whatever the best process is in terms of, consensus and a vote. I think that we will need at least another work session. I've said this before. Also we haven't talked about the text amendments. So one of the text amendments that I've made has to do with the timing and the process here. And I certainly hope, given the challenge that we've had in this moment, that there will be a majority of colleagues who agree that we need to start this process much, much sooner. And
Right.
and I also, will look to develop policy that ensures things like having, that we have the same availability for documentation for these meetings as we do our other committee meetings, and that there is a standard in terms of what documents are shared when, so that the public has the opportunity to engage in this
Yeah.
process.
And to that point, which you've raised before, which I think we all agree, we need, as soon as we put this budget to bed, to begin to discuss the process for the upcoming budget that takes into consideration all of those things that you've mentioned. Absolutely. I don't think there's anybody on the council who disagrees with that, and look forward to staff working with us towards that end. I want to go back to your first item. If members do not see items that you submitted, I thought as we were going through, people would signal if you would do due diligence to make sure all of your items are in that you submitted. That would be helpful getting that to staff. The first round for me in terms of just consent, I was looking for consensus in terms of overall cap. A, is it consistent with our priority? B, is this still a major item for us in terms of accomplishing those priorities that have been recommended here? And so getting consensus there, which ultimately, as I said, we're going to have to get to a vote, but we're not going to do that today. So at this point, if everyone would do due diligence to make sure that every single item that you put in is in here. Number two, there are text amendments. Most of us, or several of us, have made the amendments to the ordinances that were included in the document. And so those will have to come forward as well. I'm not sure, do we have time to? So first, everyone will get staff, please review the list, get the staff anything that's not been included. That's number one. The next item, if we want to, as opposed, and whether we get consensus or vote, we're still going to have to make the case for these items. For me, there's a discussion even to get to consensus. So that will be the next opportunity. And I suspect will probably need to be additional time as good. Yeah, we're going to need a little more time.
Also, President Newbill, we do have 20 more minutes if we want to speak briefly to the text amendments. My
I
colleague,
want to use
Mr.
every minute
Perkins.
that we have, but I want to get agreement here
Sure.
that
yeah.
that next iteration will get as soon as possible. And can you get to staff any items that you have submitted but didn't find reflected here? If we could do that today?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can get an updated list, and then if we can get that information to the administration, so they're taking a look and can give us feedback. Yeah, And then when we're back together, to the point, still going through and discussing the items, and getting consensus vote, making the case for each of these items, because all of them will not be possible. Not to the tune of 20 million, and this is just operating. We aren't even in CIP yet. Will, I think you're going to give us first glimpse of the text.
Thank you, council members. My name is Will Perkins, Senior Legislative Services Manager for the council. I'm going to talk you through this document. It should be on your desk. So this was, I believe, included in the materials transmitted to the administration, but I know that I just put this together very recently, so apologies for the late-breaking nature in sharing this. This is included in what y'all submitted via the form, but this is to be changes to the budget, to the primary budget ordinance, ordinance 2025-057. That ordinance includes a number of, it is essentially the budget law that effectuates the all the numbers detailed in the budget book. So it's an accompanying document. And we received draft amendments from two council members, Councilmember Newbill and Councilmember Gibson. And I want to run through those with you now. It would be very helpful for us as staff and for our partners in the attorney's office to get input from you all about your feedback and feelings towards these amendments as we consider, moving forward. So I will run through these. There are 7 that they're briefly described in the document in front of you. I'm going to move ahead now. So the first one is from Councilmember Newbill. I've written it as Newbill number 1. It proposes to remove all non-budget specific ordinances from the proposed budget. As you can see in the detail there are 5 sections within the budget ordinance that would include. Things like city attorney providing opinions in writing, changing the duties of DPW and DGS, requirements related to advertisement of job vacancies and unclassified service, and changes to the city's residency requirements. This proposed amendment, again from Councilor Newbill, removes those changes from the budget ordinance. And I want to draw your attention to 2 more on the same page below, listed as Gibson number 1 and Gibson number 2. These are duplicates of what's included in Dr. Newbill's amendment, but on smaller in scale, if you'll notice. So Gibson number 1 is the same, is included within Newbill's. Newbill's is sort of larger in scope, but in Gibson number 1 relates to the city attorney opinions, again, striking that section. And similarly, Gibson number 2 strikes the section on residency requirement changes. I will pause there if there's any questions or discussion you'd like to have on those changes.
Yes, Vice President Jordan.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand. So, agreed, would like to remove the text amendments that are not directly budget related that I think, have been talking about for a while now. So if we are removing those sections, do we need these additional amendments, or can we just work on these items later outside of budget?
I think what you're asking is you could reconsider these, or these could be reintroduced as standalone ordinances. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so just we're not going to vote on it as part of our budget votes, but of the things that you've lined out here, anything that is -057, if we pull them all out, that's a different conversation, right? If we don't need 2 different amendments. Correct, yes. New bill number 1 is inclusive of what's listed as Gibson number 1 and Gibson number 2. So you would probably choose either Ms. Newbill or Ms. Gibson, not both. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Gibson?
I just wanted to express that I will review the entire section versus the specific section that I've noticed to see to see if we can just have the one approach to
Okay.
be more to include additional language that I had not specified. So I just want to review the ordinance once again, and I'll let your team know so that we can condense as appropriate. Regarding the residency requirement changes, which is included both in Council President Newbill's recommendation and mine, and then Councilmember Abu Bakr has submitted a paper to actually reinstate more comprehensive residency requirement changes. I'm wondering if that paper can be expedited, perhaps, and brought to the body so that we are making a decision about those things. Because basically, these is removing it from here, but there's also a paper on the table regarding expanding the residency requirements. So I'm wondering if it might make sense to talk about those concurrently.
For me, what I'm looking at is any non-budget related paper to be removed from this proposed budget. And then any other item, including resident or any of those, can be brought forward at some later time and, addressed by this body. But I'm trying to make sure that what we're focused on here are really budget specific papers, period. That's it. So, and yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, I appreciate that, and I think my understanding of that again is to broadly you're not weighing in on the merits of the specific
No.
changes, but merely trying to consider the budget as the budget alone. So thank you. I want to run through the remaining 4 very quickly. So new bill number 2 on the first page. New bill number 2, the summary of it is to require as a policy that the city contracts with janitorial or for janitorial and security services would pay equivalent wages to the city minimum wage, tied now as $20 per hour. This would be in tandem with changes to the budget book to provide sufficient funding for that change. That would need to be that would in my mind be a sort of 1-year increase to the appropriate budget lines to make sure that the contracts have sufficient money for that. What this amendment does is say contracts for these services need to have requirements that their employees for these activities receive the minimum wage.
I just need to provide a point of clarification, and the administration will opine on this. I have no idea what the amount would be, nor do I have any idea how the administration would like to approach this. They could do this through contracting or through direct hiring. And so I don't presume to, determine that, but just that the intent is that the minimum wage that the city has is what would be accorded the employees of those entities. Ms. Joy Hogg.
So if you're going to go to $20 an hour for the cleaning contract, that's going to be approximately 1.1 million.
Okay.
And for the security, it is 2.4 million for a total of 3.5 million. So I would suggest this become a budget amendment versus text amendment.
Right. It is already as a part of the budget amendment. So it's already, but
Okay.
it didn't have a dollar amount. And it is already in the,
Okay.
yes.
It will need appropriation of 3.5 million.
Okay. Thank you. So it comes out of here and it would, because it's already in as a text amendment. As an enhancement, under the list of enhancements, it's already on that sheet. Mr. Burke, yes.
I was going to ask if we could get some more detail about behind that analysis. I'd heard lower estimates before about what it might impact, so I'd love to see more details to back up that 3.5 so we can know what we're voting on.
Thank you. Mr. Perkins?
Yes, ma'am. All right, I'm going to move on to Gibson number 345, which is on the second page of the handout. Gibson number 3 relates to Article 1, Section 15, which is the budget submission requirements section. What Ms. Gibson has proposed is that the due date for the budget changed to March 1st, that the mayor be required to present the budget at a special meeting at 3 p.m. on the following Thursday, and that the language associated with failure to submit the budget and penalties be reinstated.
I'd like to have some further discussion of that one because we're going to be talking about the budget process and timelines and components as we said before. So I'd like to have some consideration. Maybe it's March 1st, but it might be March whatever. So defining that in advance of the discussion about the budget process we're going to use for the next fiscal year seems a little premature to include in this time. So Ms. Gibson and I can talk to you after or something. We're just presenting, we're not voting on them at this point. So that's why I said I would talk with you a bit.
I mean, I've put some thought. The thinking on this is that before the body received its budget on March 7th, I believe. The counties receive. I think Henrico gets theirs at the end of February. And so, and when the mayor presented his budget, I recall Councilwoman Trammell, wanted to be able to talk about it and ask questions. And I think that type of engagement makes a lot of sense. And so what I outlined was basically moving the budget submission date up. The mayor would present that budget, publish it essentially, so that both the public and the body has the ability to review the documentation. And then at that time, when the formal presentation to the body is held, then council members would have an opportunity to ask questions there, perhaps even things that they've heard from community members, and we could really roll up our sleeves and get to work right away. So that, is the thinking behind that. And, I think that, if there's other ideas that folks have, I'd welcome the discussion, but I would love the opportunity to continue, the development of this ordinance update in this moment of time, because I think that it is, given the challenges that we've had here, it's an important consideration. Thank you.
I don't disagree. I believe it is important, but for me, I was putting it in the context of the overall discussion of the budget process we're going to have, because already this is a presentation of the mayor's budget, and then you mentioned a formal presentation. So rather than just piecemealing, like I said, I'm happy to talk with you more about it. We are not trying to vote on it, but just that it's embodied as a part of, because the date we might all agree should be something, I don't know, February or whatever the date, but that we take the time to do the due diligence to really look at a process and then the appropriate dates for presentation, for public hearings, all of that for our deliberations. That was it. So it wasn't, okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Perkins?
That was a fruitful and interesting discussion. Thank you. That's what we're here for. So thank you. Gibson number 4. And again, I want to flag for both number 4 and number 5, we do not have specific language here. Partially that is because, well, entirely it's because I haven't drafted it yet. So apologies. But these are, we want to get a discussion of the concept before I think I put pen to paper. That's why that's not ready yet. So number 4 is to restructure the flow of non-departmental, also known as partner agency funds, to be in the form of categorical blocks as listed on the page, and for school-based programming to be funded separately through the Richmond Public Schools budgets. So Ms. Gibson has proposed that there be 6 categories explicit in this area rather than as it is structured now. There are broad categories, but these, specific partner agency is identified, and funded down to the particular organization's name. And Ms. Gibson has proposed that we stick with categories and have an individual responsible for granting within those categories. Is that fair?
Yes.
Yes. So, the thinking here is, I would like to see council get out of the business of awarding individual charities and be in the business of setting citywide priorities. So that was the thinking in taking this approach. I think that obviously the audit that was done regarding the use of non-departmental funding, and the city has highlighted that individual council members might be pushing for funding to go to a certain organization, and I think I think that I see no reason why this process would be any different than awarding a contract. So city council is not in the business of determining who wins a contract for any particular service. And I think that, the process of administering and managing this process would fall under the responsibility of the city. City council, I think we would want to see and discuss metrics and results as we've begun to do. But this would ensure that there is no conflict of interest with individual council members, and that because I feel somewhat agnostic, the work of looking at each of the individual grantees, that's a lot of work to do. And to be frank, I think there are so many priorities that we have as a city. I think this body should be kind of focused at that top level.
Thank you, Vice President Jordan.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the work that you put into this. This is a conversation that we've had, I think, on and off ever since I've gotten on council, and I'm sure before I was on council, both in EHS and GovOps. And rather than try and come up with these amounts and descriptions in this budget cycle as a text amendment, what I'm hoping is that we would work collaboratively with administration and with, the information of the audit to come up, come up with a strategy like this. And I think that is something that's going to take, a whole year. I'm sure there would have been a desire to get more towards this budget, but I think it could be, hopefully a goal we could achieve in time for the next budget. So I think many share your sentiments. Thanks.
Councilmember Breton.
I guess my comment is similar, but I guess it comes to the question. So, I really appreciate and think we want to get to a place where we are describing our goals, right? And not in the business of micromanaging exactly which organization is getting them. And I think I've heard that the goal for next year's budget is to be ready with a process like that. But in the meantime, though, this year, I would like to hear, I think we should learn how feasible is it to do something like this, right? It wouldn't, even if it's not the perfect process we come up for next year, is there something like this that we can do so that we can eliminate these $25,000 line items that we're jockeying, with each other here, and have a department with a process that can do that, even if it's not a final process. I think I would like to hear the feasibility of that for the benefit of this year's budget process. And if it's not possible, maybe it's not possible, but I think it really could be a benefit to this year's process to hear the feasibility of a process like that for this cycle.
I was hopeful that we would be able to do that in the upcoming year, and the administration, I believe, have made a really genuine effort to do some modification in terms of that process already. We've seen that in terms of how it's framed, and even one of the budget amendment items that was in. So I would appreciate the opportunity to have more discussion, and I think it would benefit the city overall to have that discussion with the administration and how we might better organize our partnership fundings. So, but that for me, I see that as something we work towards for the new year. But that's, again, more conversation and discussion and getting agreement. We're not trying to vote on it at this point. So, Mr. Perkins, I'm sorry, you have one last item. Or did you get to it?
No, I was not sure if that was a question for folks.
I think the administration will get back with us and we'll get with them to talk about hopefully a timeline for such a discussion proposal, how we could work in the upcoming fiscal year on something like this.
Thank you. All right,
Yeah.
last one. Gibson number 5 is to amend Article 1, Section 13, which relates to the Richmond Public Schools budget, and specifically require that any unexpended prior year fund balance be reallocated to schools, as is required in Virginia State Code. I need some help, I think, further on the details of this one. I'm sorry, but that's the information I have. So Ms. Gibson, if you could elaborate, that would be very helpful.
Certainly. Having served on the school board, I've often thought quite a bit about the use of the unspent funds at the end of the year. And as we worked on the budget last year, there was an amount of in excess of $11 million in unspent funds. Over the course of my tenure, the body repeatedly used one-time funds for recurring needs. And my concern is that creates a reliance on having remaining funding at the end of the year, and could lead to instability in the district. So, the legal team, when I served on the school board, didn't highlight a concern, but in my review of Virginia Code 22.1-100, which is specific to the allocation of funds, and that law, I believe there were revisions made in 2024. I'm not close enough to the nuances of those changes. The law states that say there was an amount of, say, $5 million because of turnover with teachers, and teacher positions are funded in part through the state funding, through the standards of quality that are set, and there's some state formula. I believe some portion of that then in the law, the way it's stated now, would have to revert back to the state. And then some other portion that's funded by the city, the law states would go back to the city, and then the city would reappropriate that into, so basically the school system would say, city, we have remaining, say, $2 million from turnover savings, vacancy savings, that is city revenue. We're liking permission to have that access to that funding next year. But according to the code, that cannot be used for recurring expenses. The school board, by law, has to identify a capital fund for that funding, and the city ordinance would have to state that that would go into the identified capital fund. So in the budget request that the school board has made, there is a line item in the school's budget for this year of $1.1 million in unspent funding, essentially fund balance. And I think in order to align with the state law, that would have to be formally reallocated from the city back if it's city funding. So we have to say to the city or to the schools, like, okay, how much of that is ours and what are you asking to do with it? It would need to be stated as such in the ordinance. And then if there are any state funds, I believe that would have to go back to the state. So essentially, I believe there needs to be a system in place by which this, the city and the schools are in alignment with the use and management of the unspent funds.
We're going to need information from a couple of places. First, I don't know that amount. You saying it's 1.1 million this year that schools had?
Right.
Okay.
So
I have no idea how much back to the state, how much then we would be discussing. I don't know if, and not in this moment, but if there is a way for you to share with us what portion of that was city. None of it, you're shaking your head, okay.
So
Yeah.
just for clarity on this, so you and I spoke, I sent you the email with that breakdown.
Yes.
And I also sent an email to Councilmember Lynch in her role as the chair of the EHS. And I copied our legal counsel, our auditor, our inspector general, just so that everyone was
Right.
clear. The other thing that I noted in the email was questions regarding the schools. I want to make sure that there are no cuts that are going to be made that are not necessary. So that's the other piece of that. But as it pertains to the fund balance, I had conversation with Ms. Drury, our legal counsel. She did respond, and I believe that our auditor is going to initiate a process regarding the fund balance to figure out what the amount is so that we are in alignment with that state law. However, I do think it is incumbent upon us as a body to ensure that, because if, we're looking to, yourself, Ms. Newbill, myself, we're looking to make sure that the schools are funded. But I think it's equally important for us to ensure that, whether we're receiving documentation from the schools or any other department or organization within the city, that the numbers that we receive, there's fidelity to that, because there were some substantial questions that I had in trying to get to that total $16.5 million.
And the question, all of those questions that you submitted and copied were sent to Mr. Cameras so that we could get responses. And I was hopeful that we would have some response back, but staff will follow up with them. Did we lose a couple of staff there? But we'll follow up. But those questions
Right.
were submitted
Right.
For a response, so we can get that information.
But yeah, so this this text language is essentially saying, let's make sure we're following the law.
All right, thank you,
That
members.
concludes, there's more discussion to come on this. So between what comes from our superintendent, certainly legal, administration in terms of what percent is city or not, all of those. So there's even more. That still doesn't bespeak the broader issue, but more to come. Okay, Daniel or Mrs. Slats want to walk through for the next session, what we're
Yes.
going to cover.
Yep. So again, thank you all again for your attention throughout this process. I'll be very brief. On our side, on the chief of staff side, we have some homework to do in concert with the administration, both to clear up some of our numbers for potential reductions. And again, these are draft proposals. These are not official proposals by council yet. We will work together to make sure that what's on the table is verified by the administration, and they've provided that preliminary data for us, and we're really thankful for that. So thank you for that work under a tight timeline. And we will have all of that to you as well as the clerk, so that we can ensure that that's appropriately published, so that we have more reliable information to work off of, so that when we are tackling the real consensus, and not just consensus, but a decision, you know exactly what you're working with. So thank you for that. And then we will prep ourselves for the same work on Monday, which we've proposed to be an extended session to finish this conversation and address capital, which we know there's a large amount of need there as well. So, but any last thoughts from President Newville?
I think that I'll certainly go back and with staff and look at, is there an opportunity to add another work session, and whether or not members would be amenable to that, because we're not nearly there yet.
Yep.
Okay.
Agreed. And of course, we'll circle up with each one of you as a staff to also confirm that everything that you desire to support is reflected in these enhancement documents as well. But thank you otherwise.
Councilman Breton?
Yes, I have a question about process. So we have a lot of, ideas about cuts. We have a lot of, proposals for additions. Will the official amendments that we, are able to vote on have any requirement that they be budget neutral amendments independently, or do we simply have a requirement at the end that we reach a budget neutrality at the end? And so, I'm wondering if the official form of these amendments will have to include a corresponding cut every time, or if those are going to be separate, or if they may include a corresponding cut sometimes.
We will have to submit balanced, here. We don't have an option there. And so that's why having the administration give us some sense of, based on the proposals we've made for cuts, how real is that? So that, yes, we will have to get clarity in terms of what we propose, reality of that or not, the amounts, and agreement.
And
I don't know if I answered the
for
question.
clarity, it's the latter half of your question, which is
Yes.
we need to arrive at a balanced.
Absolutely balanced.
And but your line item submissions for proposals don't necessarily need to each balance with a commensurate reduction by line item. It is the total agreed upon slate of changes need to be balanced. That's where we'll land. But good question.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. Councilmember Trammell?
Madam President, if we have time, I'd like to ask our CAO to give us update on the mobile parks, because my phone rung until 2 a.m. this morning. The citizens are
On the mobile parks and the repair work, is that correct? Ms. Joy Hawk, if there could,
I can't find it.
Mr. Malone. And also what we have in this year's budget and what still remains to be expended, et cetera, We have that.
Councilmember, Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Councilmember, my name is Merrick Malone, and I'm Director of Housing and Community Development for the City of Richmond. And with respect to the home repair, we currently are in contract with Project Homes, who has done this work for the last couple of years. Previously, we received the allocation of $500,000 and $300,000 for this program, which we have expended or currently in progress of finishing the 40, or I think it was 45 that we had in a waiting list, that we've reduced that waiting list down to approximately 10 families. We have not begun to work on or use the FY25 $800,000. You know, there is a lag time. First, we have to get up application form to people that apply. And then, of course, you got to schedule the work. Then the work has to get done. So generally, there is a lag time behind the appropriation. So right now, the $800,000 that we have appropriated for this mobile home repair is still available. We will start moving that forward, probably, going into the beginning FY25 budget, because again, there is this lag time. And so there is $800,000 right now currently that we would spend for this particular program that exists right now.
Thank you.
List of the ones that have been fixed, it's in this package, it's all here, but anyway, I know that a lot of the citizens have moved out of the mobile parks in the past year or so. There's still a lot, there's not as many, and I know that not as many people, when we had that last meeting at the satellite, with Cheryl Hampton and with Lee Householder, only about 3 people showed up. So I want the history on how that money has been spent, how much per mobile home that they spent the money on, and then also I was getting calls in reference to, like, if you fix the water, then if you are, like, say some of them needs a roof, okay? You fix the roof, then you get then the floors, then the plumbing, then the electrical, because when the roof was leaking, it messed up, it did more damage to their home than what they had realized.
Councilmember Turnbull, I know you had asked for this information in detail. We submitted it to your office day before yesterday, which we laid out each unit that has been worked on and the price that was spent on each one of those units. The average is between 10 and 13,000 a unit, but for each phase, we did send that information to you. So you will be able to have it. You already have it. I just, it'll lay out all those things that you just asked for, or just talked about.
And you said that it, go ahead. Well, I would like my colleagues to have that too. I think, as one of my colleagues said the other day, this budget right now that we're on, because we know that we don't even know what next year is going to bring in 2026. We have no idea. We had no idea that we're going to lose $12 million when we all got the email on Saturday that we had lost $12 million. To me, when my colleague said that she wanted to look at this budget to make sure that there are things in here that's going to benefit our citizens, not just part, but all, like the finance. And I'm going to say this right now. I do not want anything to be cut in that finance department. I do not want our facilities over there at EDI or Southside Plaza, because I'm getting texts now, don't let this happen. Those citizens depend on those 2 localities, especially Southside Plaza, for services, because they can't get down here. It's too hard.
So Councilmember Tramble, let me make sure.
Ma'am.
I just want to make sure your first part is answered. So you said you have submitted to
I will make
council
that
members.
available, and I'm
And
happy to
people,
make it available for
Would
the
you
other council
submit that
members.
to all council?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then the next item, we're going to have that as part of our overall discussion because that's in our proposed cuts. I mean, in terms of, proposed cuts that some members have made. So that case is going to be made with our colleagues as well.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your time. And like I said, I know I got it here somewhere in this, but I thought what I saw, it was like continue, or some of them, many of them was not even started or finished yet. I
No,
think
there
it was
were-
a total of maybe
There were some
30.
in progress, but every one of those that are in progress, that they're under, that's on that list too. I mean, it's a very comprehensive list, and you'll be able to see it right up to what's happening today.
Thank
And I'd
you.
be happy to share it with your colleagues.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
so much.
Trammell.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Absolutely. Thank you for that request. Members, this work session stands adjourned. More information to come. Please make sure the items that believe you submitted but weren't reflected get to staff today so we can get an updated or a corrected list. Thank you.